Welcome into Sports Talk with Theo Dorsey, South Georgia. Let's talk sports. Now, last time we were here, I promised you we'd have some state champions crowned from South Georgia this week. Well, Mother Nature had other plans. A snowstorm in Atlanta this past weekend forced 6 of the 8 GHSA State Championship games to be postponed. All 5 South Georgia teams that made that trip to Atlanta were unable to play in the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Now, there was no contingency plan in GHSA bylaws for championship game relocations. The GHSA opted to have the state title games at the home sites of the higher seeded teams instead of finding alternative neutral sites. Now, there has been outrage ever since the announcement. Fans have complained of problems with stadium capacities, security, and even extra travel. But tomorrow night, teams will have to swallow that pill and lay it all on the line for the big trophy. Now, before we get into everything, I want to make a quick announcement, and I'm proud to do so. We have a special guest coming on the show later. Valdosta High School head coach Alan Rodemaker will be joining us. He won the 2016 state title last season with the Wildcats, and he will share that experience as well as help me preview some of these games because he's played a few of these teams that will be playing for state championship games. Speaking of, here's what's coming up tomorrow night. North Gwinnett will host Kaufman County, Lee County will host Coffee, and Irwin County will host Clinch County. Now, there are 2 other games not involving South Georgia teams, actually 3 other games, and all games are going to kick off Friday night at 7:30. That does wonders for us, I guess, trying to get highlights. It's also worth noting, before the move to the Georgia Dome in 2008, high schools used to host state title games every season in every classification. It isn't unprecedented, but the current situation is Lee County nor Irwin County have ever hosted a state title game, and they are both expecting record crowds tomorrow night. Now, of all the teams involved this weekend, Kaufman County may have the largest room for complaint. They're just the 11th team in the history of the Georgia High School Association football playoffs to win 4 road games to make it to the title game. And now they have to play a 5th road game for the state championship. We'll see how that pans out, but several South Georgia communities have been working hard preparing for an influx of football fans tomorrow night. That includes Irwin County down in Ocilla. WALB News 10's Mike Fussell visited with leaders of Clinch and Irwin County to check out preparations ahead of the big game.
War paint. The Irwin County Indians are touching up their field before a title battle this Friday night. And while you'd think this week would be all about bitter rivalry, the 2 opponents are relying on their shared history to make the show go on after the GHSA postponed some of last weekend's championship matchups.
You worry that, the fans will be comfortable. But again, I think that because our conversation started with what can we do to mitigate some of those measures, I think that we started off on better footing than perhaps others did.
To start, Irwin County is adding additional parking, concessions, bathrooms, and more seating.
Coming from the edge of their stands all the way around this end zone to the edge of the others is an additional 1,400 seats.
Superintendent Dr. Thad Clayton says he expects to host between 5,000 and 6,000 fans. According to GHSA bylaws, each seat is 24 inches in width, so that's just enough room for 3 of me here on this bench. But for those who weren't able to get a seat, standing room tickets will also be sold.
From this purview, you can see the hill on both sides that we've split and sectioned off so that both towns can have standing room only seating on top of the hill as well as close down to the fence and wrapping around.
And regardless of how you're watching the game, the stadium is going to be filled to the brim with red and black.
You will feel the energy from the moment the kickoff leaves the tee to the moment the buzzer blows at the end of the game.
But there's still a lot to do for both schools before Friday night.
Learning more and more about how we need to handle the ticket sales, how we're going to transport fans who maybe had other accommodations planned, but now are having to change things up.
Irwin County School District leaders say other nearby school districts, the city of Ocilla, and others have all pitched in to help make the financial side of things a little easier.
There is going to be rental on some extra amenities that we bear the cost for. At the moment, it's not so prohibitive that we shouldn't be able to pay for it with the proceeds here, but
Clayton says the experience comes once in a lifetime, and that's something the 2 leaders, who may be standing on opposite sides of the field this Friday, can agree upon.
we're looking at it as an opportunity to take on a tough rival here at home on their home field again and hopefully take home that championship from here.
Any predictions?
My prediction is that Irwin County will be victorious and win their first state championship since 1975.
All right, we're going to hold them to that. Well, additional tickets will be sold the day of. We have much more information on this game online at WALB.com underneath the sports tab. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Lee County will host Coffee for the 6A state championship game tomorrow night. Fans from Douglas have voiced numerous complaints and concerns, just trying to find out about capacity as well as security, especially compared to the originally scheduled Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And to ease that out, I went on out to Leesburg and spoke with Lee County Athletics Director Hank Wright.
But folks have started, they started at 6:30 this morning, and they'll work, as long as we need to have it ready.
Planning and preparations for the Georgia High School Association State Championship game didn't just ignite this week in Leesburg. They've been putting plans in place since last Thursday night, the day before snowstorms took over Atlanta and postponed 6 of the 8 state title games for Mercedes-Benz Stadium. First and foremost, Lee County wanted to ensure it had the capacity of at least 6,000, which is the baseline per GHSA bylaws. GHSA officials measured the stadium Monday.
We more than met the minimum. We're above the minimum. What we're trying to do now is go above and beyond even that.
They're doing so by adding temporary bleachers. The GHSA bylaws also requires Lee County to provide equal amount of seating for Coffee.
Fans, they've got from this corner, these temporary bleachers we brought in here, down the side, the visiting side, and across the back of the end zone down there, the south end zone, is all for Coffee.
With the added seating, the extra gating, and the bolstered security, they don't believe they'll have any problems on Friday night, and if there are any, they feel they're well prepared.
Law enforcement came over yesterday and met with our law enforcement, and again, those concerns have been met. They have been addressed.
The concerns Wright speaks of is the aftermath of when Lee County hosted Coffee for the region championship November 3rd. The Coffee High bus got egged and students rushed the field.
Any game that's being held, there's going to be something that happens that you have to address, not just Lee County. It's not isolated for Lee County events.
As for entry on Friday night, people who bought pre-sale tickets will be admitted between 5:30 and 6:45. At 6:45, the gates will open for $20 tickets, first come, first served, at both home and visitors' gates. The Trojans will be crowned state champs for the first time in school history Friday night in Leesburg. Whether it be the visiting team from Coffee or the ones from Lee County that won the same match on this same field just over a month ago for the region title. It will be a historic night, and plans are in place to ensure it will be a smooth one as well. Well, I'll be there, and satellite parking with shuttles and on-site parking will be available tomorrow night. For more information, also find this story online at WALB.com under the sports tab. Now, coming up right after the break, Valdosta High's Alan Rodemaker will join the show and pull us behind the curtain for this upcoming weekend, so you're going to want to stick around. Welcome to the show, Coach Alan Rodemaker. Glad you could make the trip down here. Now, in case you're wondering why I got Rodemaker here, this guy is the very latest coach, actually, to win a Georgia High School Association State Championship. Did it last year with the Valdosta Wildcats in the Georgia Dome. You're also the last South Georgia team to win a championship in the Georgia Dome. You'll have that title forever.
Yeah, well, I guess so.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
That's
I like
a good
that.
thing. And I brought you in here because I wanted to talk about that specifically. You got a chance to play in the Dome. The teams from South Georgia this year didn't get a chance to. Let's take a look at that experience you guys had when you guys played against Tucker last year in the 6A championship. I mean, how much different is it being able to play under those bright lights in a stadium like players have never played in before for all of the marbles?
Well, that's a good question. Now, I think it really helped us. We played in the Corky Kale a couple years before that. And so our kids weren't awestruck when they got in the Dome. And I thought that really helped us settle down. And we played really good early in that game, and then we just kind of held on. But I think just being in the Dome in the Corky Kale, 2 years before that, really helped our kids.
Right now, for you, especially as a coach now, and seeing what happened this year, I mean, how much do you feel for those kids knowing that some of them, that was their last chance to do it?
Oh, yeah. Well, especially in the new Dome, and I do. That's a big deal. That is a big deal. Those kids will remember that their whole life, and a lot of kids missed out on that opportunity.
Right, and again, I want to just point back to this moment. When you guys did clinch that state championship last year, a special magical season for you guys that started with the big win over Lowndes, ended with the win over Tucker, technically, because we'll talk about that other game you guys had later on. But just talk about what does the culmination of all of that feel like? What are these coaches going to be feeling tomorrow night when they win it?
Well, it's just, it goes by really fast. And a high school game's 48 minutes, and so when you go out and play, it's just like normal Friday night to me. I tell our kids all the time, I just soon play in the parking lot. Yeah. And so for me, it was the same, and it went by really fast, and it was a really good night for us, and so all I have is just fond memories of that.
Right, now my last question is, do you have a favorite memory of the Georgia Dome? I'm sure you've had a lot of experience with it as a coach.
No, I just think when the game was in hand, just giving my superintendent, my principal, Dr. Richardson and Dr. Casey a hug, and then my family coming down on the field. My family, I'm from North Carolina, so they traveled 8 hours to come to the game, and that was a special moment.
Well, I'm glad it didn't happen like that this year, because that would have been
yeah, it would have been tough.
That would have been tough. Well, let's talk about one of the teams that will be playing tomorrow night. They'll actually be hosting, and that is Lee County, who didn't get a chance to play in that dome, but they do get to play at home at Trojan Field. You played these guys this year. What is it about the Trojans that have got them to this point to have a chance?
Well, I think Lee County, just like the rest of our region, is really good on both sides. Otis Reese is a great leader on defense. Coach Fabrizio and his staff do a great job on both sides. And then I just thought their quarterback play, I guess the Orndorff kid had a really good year. And against us, Ty Terrell had a great night. And so they're good in all facets. And they showed that by winning our region. But good football team.
Definitely, and I forgot to mention, I can't believe I buried the lead. You guys handed them their only loss of the season at Baysmar Hyder. That's what we're looking at right now.
Right.
You talked about Ty Terrell having a big night. This is one of the deep bombs he caught.
Yeah, you can erase that, or we can go move forward. That was it was a great play by him because we had him covered, but that was, I felt like we were starting to take control of the game, and then they had a couple big balls that took it back.
Right, and then most of these highlights are Trojan highlights just because of the time that our cameraman went out there. But to speak to, you know, you guys beat Lee County, the only loss they have this year. They've made it all the way to the finals here. But you said things that are special about them. That defense, how tough was it going up against that team? Because I think you guys only scored 14 offensive points there.
Yeah, well, they've been tough since Dean's been there because they apply pressure. I mean, they send 5- and 6-man pressure every snap, and they don't really care what you do. They're going to do what they do on defense, and it makes them hard to prepare for.
Right, of course, and then taking it across the region, the team that they will be playing against and hosting the Coffee Trojans. I won't make you make any predictions because you got to play these teams every year in Region 1 6A. But Coffee also presents some other challenges, and what will they be presenting when they go to?
Well, I'll tell you, Coffee's the most physical team in our region, and I think if the game's low scoring, Coffee has a better chance. And I think if the score gets up there, then I think Lee has a better chance. But I would say they're about as even as anybody in our region, and you know, I'm very proud of being part of this region. You know, last year we won it in Northside. Warner Robins played in the semifinals or lost in the semifinals, and then this year we have, you know, 2 out of our 5 teams. So really, the last 2 years we got 4 out of our 5 teams that went very deep in the playoffs, and we just take a lot of pride in having this. You know, we're really the only South Georgia region in 6A.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys, I mean, beyond that, you guys have won. A team from Region 1 6A has won each of the last 4 years, if you count Kaufman County back when they were in 6A.
Right.
And that was the highest classification. So Region 1, I mean, do y'all have a case to make as the best region in that classification?
Well, I think for years and years, you know, the last 20 years in the top classification, it's been either Region 1 or Gwinnett.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Before that, it was all South Georgia for 80 years. You know, so it's been always South Georgia. And I take a lot of pride in being at Valdosta High School and being at the home of South Georgia football. That's really special to me.
Right, and then I do want to ask you before we wrap this one, because it's going to be played at Trojan Field now. As a head coach, how special is that? Have you ever participated or been a part of a championship?
Yeah, in 1998, I was at Peach County. I was an assistant coach at Peach County with Rodney Walker, and we played Daugherty. You know, Daugherty High School back then. Big John Reynolds was at Daugherty, and they had an excellent football team, and they beat us on our home field in 1998 for the state championship.
Yeah, so you've been a part of that environment. Any worries?
Didn't help us.
Of course. But, I mean, everybody's been worried about this whole playing at a high school stadium. I think they've forgotten that you used to do this all the time.
Yeah, we did. And I'll tell you this. They better be careful, because I think you see it every year in college bowl games. The team that wants to be there wins the football game. And so the guys that are always complaining about where they're going and all that, I just think that has a negative impact on your team. And I'm one of those guys that wishes, and I think most South Georgia people do. I wish all the championship games were at home.
Yeah.
I wish we all went to the Dome in the semifinals. You know, back in the day, in the 90s, we went to the Dome a couple times in the semifinals, and that was a lot better. More teams got to experience it, and then all the South Georgia venues got to host the state championship. So I'm one of those guys that would rather play the semifinals in the Dome and then play at home. So
yeah.
I may not back your case very much.
Well, no, I mean, I'm a fan of that as well.
Right,
I
okay.
mean, practically speaking, if they would have did that this year, it would have worked out. So
I do think Georgia High School will have some contingency plans for next year. It may not happen again for 50 years, but they'll have some stadiums lined up. We may be one of them for South Georgia, but they'll have some stadiums lined up, I think, in the future that'll take care of this and have a neutral site if that's what the people of, in the state of Georgia want.
Right, and we'll see just that in these coming years. Now we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Kaufman County, another team that you guys faced this year, and they have to go on the road to win a championship. We'll talk about that just after the break. Welcome back to the show. Coach Rodemaker from Valdosta High here in his second year coaching the Wildcats and his first time on Sports Talk. And I want you to talk to me about playing against Kaufman County. You guys played them. They're going to have to go up to North Gwinnett tomorrow night and play against a tough team out there in the Atlanta area. Another road trip for them. What about Kaufman County makes them so strong?
Well, I think this year they're more balanced. You know, they're better on defense than they've been, and I think Mo Dixon does a great job. But Rush always has his team prepared, and he plays this us against the world, and I think that's why he does so well in these away playoff games. You know, but you can't ask me a lot about him because we hadn't beaten them in a while. You know, when I first got to Valdosta as an assistant coach, we won the first 3 games, and then he's gotten us 5 straight. So I can't help you with that. We hadn't found a way to beat them recently, and but we play them. It's the oldest rivalry in the state. We've been playing them for like 105 years, but I have the utmost respect for them and their staff and their football program. They do an excellent job, and you know, I'll give them the advantage this week just because I think they're probably a tougher team.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if they're more talented than North Gwinnett, and I think North Gwinnett's really well coached as well on both sides. And I hadn't seen them play. I just know I'm taking South Georgia football.
There you go. That's a good way to go if you've looked at what's happening these couple of years, especially in this past playoffs. Let's take a look, though, because one of the tough things that coaches are going to have to do this week, even Rush Probst, as experienced as he is he's going to have to do something he's probably not used to, and that's prepare after he already prepared for a week. You get up to the Dome, you think you're going to play, now you got to come back home and do another week of preparation for the same game. What would you do if you were in that situation?
Well, I don't know. I thought about that Saturday when I was up at the game. That's tough. I think the hardest thing we had last year is when we won the state, we came back and we had the game in Texas. We had 10 days to prepare for that, and you know, it's really weird to go out and practice after you've won the state championship. But this year, for them to get them back up, I'm sure they didn't go hard every day, but that's tough on these kids. These kids have been playing football since the early August. Yeah. That's a long time on 16 to 17-year-old kids. So I can't tell you I know the formula for that, but I'm sure they mixed in a lot of some nice gatherings and maybe not as much contact and tried to get through the week and gave them some time off. But that's tough.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, do you want to go full contact again? Do you want to rev them back up? You don't want to go too soft, right?
Well, I think they probably gave them a couple days off and then went back at it as normal, probably on Tuesday, and prepared the same way the rest of the week. That's what I probably would have done.
There you go. Well, that's the formula right there. You guys, listen up.
Well, we'll see.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Coach.
Yeah, thank you.
Right after this break, I'm going to show these guys the play of the year, the 2 player of the year winners as well, and we'll talk about how they got there. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Very good.
This week, I had the honor of meeting the player of the year that you guys voted for both offense and defense, sponsored by Orthopedic Associate. So I want to give a quick shout out to those guys. The quarterback that won it was James Thomas of Mitchell County. This guy almost had 2,000 total yards. He had 26 total touchdowns, and he also did a great job on the ground. It's 9.7 yards per carry. A big tip of the cap to James Thomas, a sophomore quarterback. And then on the defensive side, we have Warren Brakefield of Monroe High School. He had 71 tackles. He had 6 sacks, and he had 11 tackles for a loss. This is the Albany area offensive and defensive player of the year. Thank you guys for voting. And let's take a look at the play of the year winner. And this one came out of Lee County against Glenn Academy. The game winner, Deshaun King, picks up the fumble, runs it back under 3 minutes to go. That was the game winner for Lee County. That's why they are hosting the state championship game against Coffee tomorrow. So if you see Deshaun King, tip of the cap to him as well at Trojan Field. And a tip of the cap for you for tuning in. Thank you to Alan Rodemaker for joining us. Thanks for watching us. We'll have the highlights on Friday night tomorrow night.